And welcome to the Daily Autism Radio Show. This, of course, our radio version of dailyautism.com. My name is Mark. You can chronicle my wife, Melissa, and our family of 5, our youngest son, Cal, who is autistic. He was diagnosed about 3 years ago. You can chronicle everything that we've been sharing for the last 3 years at dailyautism.com, which includes, of course, links to all of our social sites, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Inevitably, I'm probably leaving some out. All of our podcasts, and of course, our radio show, which we also post up on all of our podcast platforms, YouTube, etc. So we'd love to see you on dailyautism.com and connect with those platforms that you use. We continue to grow. The growth has been really unbelievable. I think primarily because, when we started this, we just didn't know there was a community out there of, special needs parents, specifically parents of autistic kids. And it has just grown and grown and grown. And I guess really in reality, that just matches up with the prevalence rates of autism and where we stand right now. Going to do something a little bit different today for the radio show, as we are now, let's face it, we are in like prime election season. It is full on political season. The ads are running, debates are scheduled. Of course, we've had major news with former President Trump in New York and all of that. So it's just been really an interesting time, but I want to really see how this all relates to autism. Basically, what have candidates done? What have they said? Presidents, even celebrities. In the news recently, Robert De Niro, he showed up in New York and really was kind of a quirky, odd, I guess speech from him, but kind of not really sure what he was really doing there. I mean, I know he was talking about former President Trump, but he kind of lost his cool with the crowd and went on a tirade with the crowd. But it's really interesting. He had some very interesting remarks several years ago about autism. He has an autistic son. It's hard to find these. I think a lot of the guys that the crew that he rolls with now would not really love some of the comments he made at a film festival in New York that he was a part of founding, and there was a movie that they had to take out of this film festival because it had talked about autism and certain links possibly to certain medications, big pharma, vaccines, those kind of things. So really kind of an interesting 5 or 6 minutes of audio. We're going to play that for you. But I really made kind of a mashup of all of these candidates, everybody from Hillary Clinton, Marco Rubio, Ben Carson, George Bush, and up into President Trump. And so I just think it's really interesting to get all these perspectives from these different candidates as we get into political season, the things that they've said. And one thing that struck me as we were finding all of this audio and all of this video, if I were to play you, just read to you, I guess, the transcripts, you would have no idea who said it. And many times, a lot of these candidates and like ultra different parties and perspectives, especially now when it seems like nobody agrees on anything. But when it comes to autism, it's very surprising. You really wouldn't know who said what. You'd go, really? Wow, he said that? She said that? That was her idea? Really? It's really interesting as we put this together. So the last 25 or so minutes of the show is going to be a mashup of these former candidates, presidents, even a couple of celebrities, and what they've said about autism and public policy and really just lifestyle and how they've reached out and how that's kind of changed over time, and how they've tried to reach out to prospective voters. And before that, I want to go on a timeline of actually what each president has done, going back to George W. Bush, of what each president has done as it relates to autism and the impact it's had on families of autism. It's really interesting to see what, these political figures have said, have signed. Some legislation has been overlooked. But again, as we get into a political season, inevitably, like I said, we're coming up on more presidential debates, and all the commercials are hitting. I mean, it's social media now is inundated. So it's important for families of autism to have a presence in the national conversation and what's going on politically. We just don't have that big footprint. I do think it's increasing. I think it's getting better. But, we're still not there yet. But I want to just go back in time, some history, and talk about what some of these past presidents have done. Real quick, again, dailyautism.com is where we are online. I do want to mention several of our autism awareness partners, including Technology North CEO Ling Huang, who's really done some amazing things with Technology North. And I actually think that the best is obviously yet to come with what they're doing and really creating an environment where these young adults on the spectrum can go. And not only can they have employment in what's becoming a growing field, different ideas, different things that they're accomplishing, but really creating a purpose for a lot of these young adults that hopefully will last into the rest of their lives. I mean, think about it, a chance to earn some income, to understand what having a job is, responsibilities, interacting with peers, and waking up every day having a purpose, and how much that does for the families of autistic kids and inevitably, obviously, young adults on the spectrum. Technologynorth.net. Also, I want you to go and check out, because you really get a great idea what Ling has created alongside his son, Brian. They're doing remarkable things. I just saw some pictures. They're speaking at a conference in Canada, and really fascinating stuff. But technologynorth.net, and then the documentary on YouTube, which again is totally free, Cliff 20. It's about 25 minutes long. I really, really recommend it. I've shared this with dozens of families. All the feedback is just, the words are all the same. Unbelievable, inspiring, amazing. And Ling has created this and has just gone full force into the future. It's been really neat to see. So technologynorth.net. And again, on YouTube, the documentary is called Cliff 20. Make sure you check that out. Also, I want to give a mention and a thank you to the great people, the Tampa Tarpons. Fantastic baseball. Listen, I'm a fan of sports. I love sports. Baseball is just, I grew up playing baseball. One of my kids plays baseball. I just love it. But what the Tarpons have done here in the Tampa Bay area with the new CureMark Safe Sensory Suite is really awesome. Tarponsbaseball.com. You can go, you can sign up. And what they do there with their suite is really great, because actually an entire family gets the whole suite for the entire game. And you can learn more at tarponsbaseball.com. That is also where you can sign up. It's really, really great that they have taken the time to do that. It's great of CureMark to step in and fund it, build it. It's just been a great partnership and something that's absolutely great for the community. Again, tarponsbaseball.com to see what they've done. And CureMark, by the way, has done that at several other stadiums in partnership with the New York Yankees. The Yankees, obviously, are the owners of the Tampa Tarpons. It's just really cool to see autism awareness get into the mainstream and get into sports. That's been really, really cool. So I want to go back here and just list some of the American presidents and how they've addressed autism, whether it be emphasizing awareness, support, research, all that stuff over the last year. So we go back to George W. Bush, because this is almost 20 years ago now, when he signed the Combating Autism Act of 2006. I mean, here we are almost halfway through 2024. So we're pushing 20 years on this. But what this did by President George W. Bush, it increased federal support for autism research, prevention, and treatment. So the act actually authorized the creation of a national education program for doctors and the public. And what this did was it improved early identification and intervention for children with autism. So it's interesting to hear that, because we're still even now pushing for that, right? We're still saying, hey, we need to identify these traits, the diagnosis, everything a little bit earlier. And, they were trying to understand the causes, any treatments, interventions, and everything back in 2006. And so, you think about, gosh, we feel like we're far away today. Imagine what parents back in 2006 felt like. And even obviously long before. But that was President George W. Bush. And again, that increased federal support and obviously the federal funds. Then we move on to President Barack Obama. Now, he made strides in trying to improve the lives of individuals through policy and support measures. So his focus of the administration was increasing access to necessary treatments for military children through the Defense Department's TRICARE health plan. He also advocated for better insurance coverage for autism treatments for federal employees. So, overall, it looked like the Obama administration really doubled down on federal employees and those in the military who had children that were on the autism spectrum. And so that was kind of a difference in stance from President George W. Bush, the Autism Act of 2006, which really didn't specify, what you did for a career or what group you worked in, military or things like that. But President Obama was a little more focused on that. And I will say, too, he also did step in for better insurance coverage for autism treatments overall. And so that was something I think that hadn't been discussed is, what did insurance have to do? What was the requirement or the responsibility on insurance companies? Because, the insurance companies are making money, didn't really understand autism, how they would play a role in it. And so what President Obama focused on a little bit more was, okay, how can insurance companies get involved? And does government have to force their hand? Going on to President Trump, who signed the Autism Cares Act of 2019. And again, this was about collaboration, accountability, research, education. This was signed into law September of 2019. Now, this reauthorized the 2014 Autism Cares Act, but it actually increased funding. So President Trump's, what he signed, it provided $1.8 billion in funding over 5 years for those on the autism spectrum. It also increased programs and, supporting individuals with autism across their lifespan. This obviously monetarily was the biggest support that the United States has ever seen. President Trump spoke several times during his administration about this being something that was very personal to him. He talked about having employees, and he spoke, once about. Actually, we're going to play this clip a little bit later on. It was during one of the Republican debates. He had a woman that was working with him, and this was at the Trump Corporation, and she had just had a baby, and then when she came back to work, she went and the baby went in, got some shots, baby got very sick, and then, a little down the road was diagnosed with autism. And so part of his push was, hey, how can we make childhood essentially safe for all kids? Are there some kids that can't handle some, it could be vaccines, but yes, it could be other things as well. Even Dr. Ben Carson said, hey, there's a lot of kids that can't handle certain medications that aren't vaccines. We got to figure out what it is for what kids. And so, that was something that Trump had always talked about being a big issue for him. And obviously the $1.8 billion in funding was a big step for the country as a whole. As far as President Biden, he issued, several proclamations, claimed that he was committed to expanding funding for autism research and wanted to focus on the early childhood programs and even the assistive technology in schools. That was one of the things that I think was overlooked by nearly everybody and really still is. There's just not enough money, is what does autism and kids with ASD, what does that look like in the public school system? And it's not so much, honestly, about the kids. It's about the supports that they can receive and what's available. I mean, the teachers and the administration could only do so much. First off, there's not enough. The training is way behind where it needs to be. And overall in the public school system, we've just got teachers that are now dealing with, rates of, I mean, you have some of these classes where there's 40, 45 kids in a class in some cities and some counties. And, add in special needs. It's just become overwhelming for teachers. But then you add in the special needs aspect of it, and it really gets to be something there. So kind of a brief timeline on, what it has looked like as far as presidents go, what presidents have done, and, kind of their stance on things. It's hard to obviously overall evaluate, President Biden as he's still in his first term, although coming to the end of it. But, it was more of a continuation of a lot of what President Trump did. But again, President Trump with a large financial interest with that $1.8 billion towards autism research, awareness, and those things as well. And I will say, and we're going to play it for you coming up, that President Obama spoke many times about autism and how, he believed that it was an epidemic. Also, Senator John McCain, when he was running against President Obama, they had a very interesting back and forth. We're going to play that as well, and how they kind of, they disagreed on a lot of things, but when it came to autism, they were definitely in lockstep that we were at a point where something really needed to be done. Let's talk about Angel Sense and why you need to go to angelsense.com. This is not just GPS assistive technology. Look, we know kids with special needs, especially autism, can elope, meaning they can take off, they can run, they're fast, and many times they seek water, bodies of water. This could be retention ponds, oceans, rivers, lakes, you name it. These kids love water, and they run to water. Many times the outcome is tragic. So what Angel Sense has done is created a technology where you can literally know where your child is at all times, become alerted if they go somewhere where they're not supposed to be. And I think, honestly, most importantly with Angel Sense is be proactive in getting people on the road to go and get your child. Could be a neighbor, could be a teacher, could be a law enforcement officer. There are so many aspects of the technology to not just, okay, I see where my child is. How can I get someone there now? And getting real-time coordinates. Angelsense.com. The devices are free with a subscription. You can also go to dailyautism.com and click on the Angel Sense button. This is something every special needs parent needs to consider. You just have to look at this. You have to understand the technology. And honestly, more than anything else, is just read what other parents of autism are saying. Just read what a mom of an autistic child is saying whose child eloped from school, took off, or left a therapy center. And first off, obviously what that was like, terrifying as you can imagine, but then also how they came to a successful outcome. Okay, angelsense.com for all of that information. Also, another fantastic autism awareness partner is our friends at Begin Health, and they developed Growing Up Prebiotics. I'll tell you, we've been going down the road of Cal. We're really trying to get into a place where we can do potty training. He's 6 now, and we've had so many failed attempts. And what we've come to realize was, and a lot of people I think don't know this, is that, the prebiotics help the probiotics. So this is just great for the gut. We know a lot of these ASD kids have big gut issues. Cal has had terrible gut issues. These prebiotics just soothe that entire system. They make it a great place for the probiotics to thrive. And again, you can grab their discount through our link, dailyautism.com, and click on Begin Health. It's the Growing Up Prebiotics, different than probiotics. But I wanted to relate it to potty training because Cal is so much more patient now in accepting potty training and being patient with it. And it just makes so much sense to us now. It's because he's just feeling better about going to the bathroom overall. He's just in a happier place in going to the bathroom. So again, you might as well grab our discount. We highly recommend this, Growing Up Prebiotics, from our friends at Begin health. Also, we want to talk about our friends at the Lift Academy in Clearwater, Florida, liftfl.org, an awesome organization. Their mission of starting and allowing kids, neurodiverse kids, to thrive has been unbelievable. Their campus in Clearwater is now open. It is the Taj Mahal. It is big. It is beautiful. They have the absolute best staff. Again, liftfl.org. Over 95% of their kids that go there are on a scholarship, and they can help you through that entire process. So liftfl.org to learn about our friends at the Lift Academy. They have done great work. They have grown. This is an organization that just is loved by the community, and started and founded by the Mondellos, who have a neurodivergent child, and this is just a great organization. Also, the original Krabby Bill's, Indian Rocks Beach, Florida. This is our home away from home, when we can get a night out and go relax, and we just want to feel like we've washed up on a tropical island with great music, great happy hour, and the best seafood in all of the Tampa Bay area. That is where we go, the original Krabby Bill's, Indian Rocks Beach, Florida. And again, just fantastic supporters, not only of the community, but of autism awareness. And we obviously definitely appreciate them, the original Krabby Bill's. So obviously I was just talking about, the challenge with potty training and special needs families. Aeroflow Urology may be able to provide you and your family with free diapers. I want you to go to dailyautism.com, click on the Aeroflow Urology button. It takes 2 minutes, probably less, to fill out a form and get very quick feedback on if you may qualify. And again, these may be 100% covered, also delivered free to your door. Diapers are outrageous in this just massive inflationary world that we live in. Diapers have not been immune to that. Actually, I actually think that they've actually gone up ahead of almost anything else. We've talked to families that their diaper bills. There was one family, and they have twins on the spectrum, not potty trained, and they said that their monthly diaper bills were about equal to one of their car payments. It's just unbelievable. So again, dailyautism.com. Aeroflow Urology, click on the button. It takes 2 minutes. Also a great link to send out to any of your family or friends who may be struggling with potty training with a special needs child and need some help with these free diapers delivered right to your door. And again, in just a minute, we're going to get to a mashup here, being that we're in political season, of candidates past and present, those who have run for president, former presidents. Also, we're going to have a couple of celebrities and what their thoughts have been over the years and the decades about autism awareness, and how it relates to politics, the ideas they had, the things that they talked about, even some of the debates that they've had. It's a really interesting 25 minutes to just go through and listen to what these figures have said. Many of these people are in the news now, and you'll probably agree with some of them a lot, disagree with others of them a lot about things, and that's all good, because we got to have the conversations. If we're not having the conversations, then everything's lost. But it's just interesting to hear their perspectives over the years, how it relates to autism, being that we are in the full swing of political season. Many of you know we have a sensory suite in Seminole, Florida, in Pinellas County. It is called My Sensory Studio. And I want you to check out all of the information about it. You can go to dailyautism.com, where we post tons of video of Cal getting his vestibular workouts there, having a blast. But none of it would be possible without Fun Factory Sensory Gym. And if you go to dailyautism.com, I want you to link to their website, see their awesome videos. They build these sensory studios really in anywhere. I mean, they've put them in hospitals, therapy centers, schools, churches, even people's homes. So dailyautism.com, and click on the Fun Factory Sensory Gym button. And while you're there at dailyautism.com, I want you to check out the Somos family brands. They have devised this. We've all heard of a sensory swing, but what I've not heard of is a sensory swing that also converts to a hammock. We have one of these hanging in our living room. It has absolutely become one of Cal's favorite parts of his day, a morning routine and a night routine. And this hammock has its own sewn-in pillow. Very cool. They're offering a sale on it now. It was very easy to put up. We've got it basically screwed right into our ceiling, and we've got a crash mat underneath it. dailyautism.com, and click on the Somos Family Brands button, where you can grab that discount while they are offering it right now. That is something that we overlooked at probably for too long. We just didn't really understand the value of that until we got one, and now we're like, well, how could we possibly live without it? So again, dailyautism.com. Somos is the button you want to click on so you can get that order. We ordered it, I think, right off of their Amazon page. And finally, Dr. John Young and the Young Foundational Health Center in Largo, Florida. We are going to have Dr. Young on again next week, all across the podcast platforms, our social media channels, and of course, our weekend radio shows. Last time we had him on, we got just pounded with emails and messages. So I know we're talking about the right things when we get feedback like this. So really excited next week. Dr. John Young will be back on the show. And again, across all of our digital platforms, youngfoundationalhealth.com. And of course, you can also get his link at dailyautism.com. The Dr. Young button is right there. He does really some unbelievable videos across his social platforms for special needs parents. But his ideas, his research, it's cutting edge. I really love what his current patients say about their children who are autistic and the things that they've seen developmentally by working with Dr. Young. And we're going to have a great conversation next week about some great things about health and vitamin D and just all of these new modern perspectives as it relates to autism. So be able to make sure you check that out next week. And again, link to his website on dailyautism.com. Just click on the Dr. Young Foundational Health button. Okay, as promised, here we go. This is a mashup of former presidents, candidates, celebrities, and the things that they've done and said, their ideas about autism. And again, you can find us online at dailyautism.com.
And now I sign legislation which takes a sledgehammer to another wall. One which has for too many generations separated Americans with disabilities from the freedom they could glimpse but not grasp. And once again, we rejoice as this barrier falls, proclaiming together, we will not accept, we will not excuse, we will not tolerate discrimination in America.
We're back at 8:45. The Tribeca Film Festival was first launched to help revitalize Lower Manhattan after the 9/11 attacks.
Tonight it kicks off with a celebration of its 15th year. Oscar winner Robert De Niro and producer Jane Rosenthal co-founded the festival, and they're with us this morning. Good morning, guys. Good to see you.
Good morning.
So this did start, Robert, as you well know, as a response to 9/11, as getting the city back up on its feet downtown. And now here you are 15 years later. When you started it, did you imagine it as an ongoing festival or something that was just for that moment in time?
Well, you would like to think that it would go on, be part of the New York, part of the tradition, part of the fabric of the city, and it looks at this point like it could be. And so that's great. We had no idea, that we weren't sure with anything at this point.
There was a bit of controversy, some headlines at the beginning of this year's festival when it was announced that this film called Vaxxed would be screened at the festival. Later, the festival pulled it. Was it because of the backlash? Were you surprised that people reacted the way that they did?
I was shooting a movie. I was in the middle of a lot of stuff. I think the movie is something that people should see. There was a backlash which I haven't fully explored, and I will. And I didn't want it to start affecting the festival in ways that I couldn't see. But definitely there's something to that movie. And there's another movie called Trace Amounts. And there's a lot of information about things that are happening with the CDC, the pharmaceutical companies. There's a lot of things that are not said. I, as a parent of a child who has autism, I'm concerned, and I want to know the truth. And I'm not anti-vaccine. I want safe vaccines. When you get, some people can't get a certain type of shot, and they can die from it. You know, even penicillin. So why should that not be with vaccine, which it isn't?
So you said you went public for the first time saying that your 18-year-old son does have autism.
Yes.
That had been a very private thing for you. And
Yes.
part of the reason you wanted this film shown was to start that conversation.
Absolutely.
Do you believe you'll now have a role in that conversation going forward?
Possibly, yes. Because the thing is that to shut it down, there's no reason to. If you're scientists, let's see, let's hear. Everybody doesn't seem to want to hear much about it. It's shut down. And you guys are the ones that should be the investigating. Do the investigating.
I think the film was controversial because people felt that the filmmaker had been discredited.
Even he, I'm not so sure about. At the end of the day, even him.
Jane,
well, the one thing, it wasn't. There weren't sponsors or donors that were threatening to pull out of the film festival. It was our filmmakers, and we're known for having amazing documentary films. You can take a look at our lineup, whether it's what we're starting with tonight or some other documentaries that are, equally controversial that we have at the festival. So it was our filmmakers that were pulling out. There's another amazing film about. I find that
amazing, and we're going to talk about that.
But there's another amazing film that was done by Roger Ross Williams that won the Audience Award at Sundance called Life Animated about autism, right. And it's a really beautiful film about the Susskind family. And
it's a beautiful film, but it's another thing. It's the result of. It's not questioning how some people got autism. How the vaccines are dangerous, if not dangerous to certain people who are more susceptible. And nobody seems to want to address that, or they say they've addressed it, and it's a closed issue, but it doesn't seem to be, because there are many people who will come out and say, no, I saw my kid change like overnight. I saw what happened, and I should have done something, and I didn't. So there's more to this than meets the eye, believe me.
Is that the experience you had, Robert? Something changed overnight?
My wife says that. I don't remember, but my child is autistic, and every kid is different. But there is something there. There's something there that people aren't addressing. And for me to get so upset here today, on the Today Show with you guys, means there's something there. That's all I wanted, was the movie to be seen. People can make their own judgment, but you must see it. And there are other films, other things that also just document and show. It's not such a simple thing.
Do you regret pulling it now in some sense?
Part of me does, and part of me says, let it go for now. And I'll deal with it later in another way. But because I didn't want the festival to be affected in a way, because it was like a knee-jerk reaction, and especially from the filmmakers, frankly, that I
the other filmmakers who were in the festival.
Whoever they were, I didn't even want to ask. But now I will ask.
Robert, it is nearly consensus in the scientific community that there's no link there. Do you believe that's not true?
I believe it's much more complicated than that. It's much more complicated than that. There is a link, and they're saying there isn't, but there's certain things. There's the obvious one is thimerosal, which is a mercury-based preservative. But there are other things there that I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but I know, because I've seen so much reaction about just let's find out the truth. Let's just find out the truth. I'm not, I'm not anti-vaccine, as I say, but I'm pro-safe vaccine. And there are some people who cannot take a vaccine, and they have to be found out and warned that you just don't give a kid a bunch of shots and then something happens. Some parents, even in this documentary, they say, I knew I shouldn't have done it. I knew I shouldn't have done it. I talked to the doctor, or he's the doctor. I should listen. I should listen. I did it. The next day, imagine how the parent feels.
The worry is that people who hear those words and wonder about it will then not have their child vaccinated, which has led to a higher incidence of things like mumps and measles, that kind of thing.
I don't know if those statistics are accurate. I'm not the one to say, but I would question even that. There's a kind of a hysteria, a knee-jerk reaction. Let's see. As I say, everyone should have the choice to take vaccines. Some places it's becoming mandatory, but it does benefit the big drug companies, funnily enough.
If you want to start to look at facts and statistics, one of the things that you do need to look at in this movie, Vaxxed, is the contradictions of facts and statistics right off the top with what's stated with what the rise is, what the graph is, and then people saying something different. So you need to read the reviews of that movie.
For disease control said about 1 out of every 68 children will now be diagnosed as having some condition on the autism spectrum disorder. So people have been saying to me, what can you do to help me? And here's what I want to do. Today I'm rolling out a policy to try to help families, particularly parents. A lot of parents who are working so hard around the clock to take care of their daughter or their son. I want more screening so we can find out earlier if there's a problem. I want to make sure that the insurance companies cover the services that families need to help their child or young adult with autism. I want to be sure we have the services that people need as they get older. I was in Cedar Rapids yesterday, and a man raised his hand. I called on him, and he said to me, "What can you do to help me? I'm on the autism spectrum." And I said, "Well, you're doing really well." He goes, "Yeah, I'm doing really well, but I worry about what will happen when my mom's gone, because she takes care of me and I take care of her." So we need more services, we need more support, we need to make sure that families dealing with autism, the caregiving that you are providing is respected and supported. I feel the same way about Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death in our country. So I also have a policy about what to do for more research and more support for families. And I want to give caregivers a tax credit, because you know, when you're taking care of somebody in your family, it's a child, a spouse, an adult, parent, or aunt or uncle or grandparent, that's an emotional, physical, and financial burden, isn't it? So we need to do more to help each other. And we need to do more on mental health.
Has an autistic son, one of my best. My general counsel has an autistic son. One of my best friends in Chicago has an autistic daughter. And I know, you know, how fiercely you love your child, but I also know how much, how hard it is, you know, how much work it is for you, and how much support you need. So one of the first things I want us to do is to find out, why is it that we're seeing increased incidence of autism? We've got to put a lot more money into research and the science behind autism, because the rates are skyrocketing. And nobody has pinpointed exactly why, but it is reaching epidemic proportions here in the United States. And it's something that I want to devote serious research dollars to dealing with. So that's point number one. Point number two, for parents who already have autism, whose children have already been diagnosed with autism, you know, we're going to have to give you more support, which means that, and the support comes in two ways. Some of it is on the healthcare front, because they may have special needs, and you know, this would be comprehensive coverage. So your son wouldn't be excluded for a pre-existing condition in terms of getting the treatments that he needs. But a lot of it is also the schools, right? Because what we need is early diagnosis can make a big difference in terms of how your son or anybody with autism ends up adapting. The earlier it's diagnosed, the more frequent their therapies, the better their outcomes oftentimes. So what I want to do is make sure that we've got effective screening in every public school, and that as part of the special education mandate and program that exists in every school district, that autism and care for autistic kids and therapy and you know, all the work that's required, that is part of every school district's mandate, the requirement that they provided, and the federal government has to provide the funding needed for special education, something that it has never done. We've always promised at the federal level that we'd provide 40% of special education funding, but the most it's ever been is 18%. And what I've said is we're going to start fully funding special education the way that it was originally intended. But you know, I know how difficult things are right now, and so I will. And there's a number of organizations of parents of autistic kids who've started to get mobilized and organized in Washington, and they're starting to get a voice, and I look forward to working with those organizations.
And autism, I think, is a prime candidate where we've seen just a skyrocketing autism rate. Nobody knows exactly why. There's some people who are suspicious that it's connected to vaccines and triggers, but this person included. The science right now is inconclusive, but we have to research it. Part of the reason I think it's very important to research it is those vaccines are also preventing huge numbers of deaths among children and preventing you know, debilitating illnesses like polio. And so we can't afford to junk our vaccine system. We've got to figure out why is it that you know, this is happening, so that you know, we are starting to see a more normal, what was a normal rate of autism because if we keep on seeing increases at the rate that we're seeing, we're never going to have enough money to provide all the special needs, special education funding that's going to be necessary.
And by the way, she also understands special needs families. She understands that autism is on the rise, that we got to find out what's causing it, and we've got to reach out to these families and help them and give them the help they need as they raise these very special needs children. She understands that better than almost any American that I know. I'm proud of her.
I think it's very commendable, the work she's done on behalf of special needs. I agree with that, John. I do want to just point out that autism, for example, or other special needs, will require some additional funding if we're going to get serious in terms of research. That is something that every family that advocates on behalf of disabled children talk about. And if we have a across-the-board spending freeze, we're not going to be able to do it. That's an example of, I think, the kind of the use of the scalpel that we want to make sure that we're funding some of those programs.
Every single year, we improve our ability to diagnose the spectrum. More and more people will be diagnosed, more and more children, because we're more and more attuned to what it means to have autism. It's not like other afflictions. It's so multifaceted, and the spectrum is so broad, and it manifests itself in so many different ways, that every single year, kids who may have gone under the radar and may have been borderline diagnosed or not are going to be diagnosed. This problem's not going away. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a physician. I can't tell you what's causing it. We obviously don't know yet how to prevent it. We do know this issue is going to be real and it's going to continue to exist, and it doesn't discriminate. This is not an issue that's prevalent in one community over another. This is not an issue that you find among poor people but not among rich. As long as we are around, I think this society will have to deal with this issue. And we have no choice but to deal with it. Because dealing with people with disabilities in general, and children in particular, is one of the things that distinguishes us as a country. If we ever as a society accept that there are certain children and certain people that will not be able to fully fulfill whatever their potential is because of the circumstances of their birth, we will lose one of the things that makes us different from the rest of the world. We will lose one of the things that distinguishes us from all these other countries. And it goes to the core of our foundation as a country. People forget that one of the founding documents of this nation was the Declaration of Independence, and at its core was a very powerful belief. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. What that means in modern-day English is that every single one of us has rights that we're born with, that God gave us. That government's job is to protect those rights. It's not the source of our rights. And that applies to every aspect of our life. And autism is going to be a critical component of that. Kids with autism can succeed. We see it every single day, more and more. Kids with autism can accomplish every dream, every hope, every ambition. Kids with autism can go on to have perfectly functional and successful lives. Depending on where you are on the spectrum, kids with autism can go on to have very distinguished lives, where quite frankly you may not even know they had autism. But only if we deal with it, and only if society adapts to it. And more often than not, the people in our society who are the true heroes are not the people whose faces on the cover of a magazine or featured in a news story. They're the people whose stories will never be told, whose names will never be known, but every single day, in very real ways, they are changing the lives of real people forever.
Unhappy with the possibility of a Trump-Biden rematch, and third-party candidates are set to play a decisive role in the race. Among them is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He announced his run as an independent in October after he ended his bid for the Democratic Party nomination. The latest poll from Quinnipiac University shows that in a three-way matchup against Trump and Biden, 21% of registered voters said they backed Kennedy.
The autism epidemic was an artifact of new or changing diagnostic criteria or better recognition. You would see it in all age groups. In my age group, 69 years old, the autism rates in my age group are 1 in 10,000. Still. In my children's age group, it's 1 in 34, 1 in 22.
There have been numerous studies, and they have not demonstrated that there's any correlation between vaccinations and autism. This was something that was spread widely 15 or 20 years ago, and it has not been adequately revealed to the public what's actually going on. Vaccines are very important, certain ones, the ones that would prevent death or crippling. There are others, or a multitude of vaccines, which probably don't fit in that category, and there should be some discretion in those cases. But, a lot of this is pushed by big government, and I think that's one of the things that people so vehemently want to get rid of big government. We have 4.1 million federal employees, 650 federal agencies and departments. That's why they have to take so much of our taxes.
Should he stop saying it? Should he stop saying that vaccines cause autism?
Well, I've just explained it to him. He can read about it if he wants to. I think he's an intelligent man and will make the correct decision after getting the real facts.
Mr. Trump, as president,
I'd like to
I'm
respond.
going right to you.
I'd like to
Mr.
respond.
Trump, as president, you would be in charge of the Centers for Disease Control and the National Institutes of Health, both of which say you are wrong. How would you handle this as president?
Autism has become an epidemic. 25 years ago, 35 years ago, you look at the statistics, not even close. It has gotten totally out of control. I am totally in favor of vaccines, but I want smaller doses over a longer period of time. Because you take a baby in, and I've seen it, and I had my children taken care of over a long period of time, over a 2 or 3 year period of time, same exact amount. But you take this little beautiful baby and you pump, it looks just like it's meant for a horse, not for a child. And we've had so many instances, people that worked for me just the other day, 2 years old, 2.5 years old, a beautiful child, went to have the vaccine and came back and a week later got a tremendous fever, got very, very sick, now is autistic. I only say I'm in favor of vaccines. Do them over a longer period of time, same amount,
Thank you.
Just in little sections.
Dr. Carson?
And I think you're going to see a big impact on autism.
Dr. Carson, you just heard his medical take.
He's an okay doctor. Okay. But, the fact of the matter is, we have extremely well-documented proof that there's no autism associated with vaccinations. But it is true that we are probably giving way too many in too short a period of time. And a lot of pediatricians now recognize that, and I think are cutting down on the number and the proximity in which those are done.
And
I think that's
all I'm
appropriate.
saying, Jake. That's all I'm saying.
Dr. Paul, I'd like to bring you in.
All right, thank you so much, Jesse. Well, all new at 6 tonight, President Donald Trump signs over $1 billion in funding for autism research. Lauren, you spoke to a clinic providing therapy for children with autism in Northwest Arkansas. What did it say about this bill?
Well, Crystal, on Monday, President Trump signed the Autism Cares Act. This act is the primary source of federal funding for autism research, services, training, and monitoring. AIM, Autism in Motion, a clinic in Fayetteville, offers therapy for children ages 2 to 18 who have received an autism diagnosis. AIM Regional Clinical Director Brandon Sykes says the money this bill is providing is going to offer more research on what causes autism, what services are out there to help, and what resources parents have. Sykes says this bill is important to the 40,000 kids in the state with autism, specifically because there is an underserved population of kids on the spectrum who need services.
So what we're hoping and what's amazing about that money is it's going to help funnel some information into the area and provide more resources so that hopefully we can kind of help combat that issue and making sure that every kid does have services.
Sykes says it's a great feeling to know we're moving in the right direction, but we need this to continue in the long run. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 59 children is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. It's about 4 times more common among boys than girls. Live in studio, Lauren Craycall, KNWA Northwest Arkansas News.
And this one is coming to us from the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. And I think it's worthwhile to read because I think what it says is absolutely beautiful. So this is the proclamation on World Autism Awareness Day 2019. On World Autism Awareness Day, we honor the millions of Americans living with autism spectrum disorder who, in spite of the challenges they may face, continue to make extraordinary contributions to their families, their communities, our nation, and the world. We also express our sincere appreciation to the families, friends, medical professionals, and caregivers who help Americans with ASD pursue their American dream.
Well, there it is, some 20 years of autism policy perspective from former presidents, presidential candidates, politicians, celebrities, as we get full into the 2024 political season. We're online 24/7 at dailyautism.com.